Welcome to the Future of Surrogacy, the podcast that explores the people, the innovations, and the ideas building the next generation of surrogacy. If you're a surrogacy professional that has wondered whether AI and empathy can coexist in a deeply personal process like surrogacy, this is the episode for you. Today, we are joined by Billie Simmons, the CEO of Symbe, who is the creator of Riley, which is the AI intake assistant that's changing how surrogacy agencies qualify, screen, and support surrogate candidates. With a degree in pop music, a stint as a professional musician, and a self-taught coder since age 11, Billie's path is anything but traditional. Before Symbi, she co-founded Daylight, which was a groundbreaking LGBTQ plus banking platform that built financial tools designed for LGBTQ plus people, including funding options for LGBTQ plus intended parents pursuing surrogacy. And as a future IP herself, she was naturally very interested in this process. So Billie's superpower, seeing complex problems and building beautiful, functional, human-centered solutions that actually work. Whether it's software or systemic inequality, she's not just fixing things, she's reimagining them. So we're very excited to have her with us today to talk through what we've been seeing so far with Riley, our AI intake assistant, and how technology, when done right, can actually bring more humanity into the surrogacy process. So welcome to the Future of Surrogacy, Billie.
Thank you, Erin. What a lovely heady intro to give me. I need you to amp me up before all of my meetings, I think.
Well, you're my boss, so
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, let's just get started because we have been meeting with so many agencies, but we are hearing a lot of the same concerns. So before we get into the top concerns that we hear about from agency owners, we will get into that feedback. But first, let's give a little bit of information about Symbi and kind of the premise to starting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Symbi came about because of a convergence in sort of two areas of my life simultaneously. The first one being my professional life. I was building financial tools for the LGBT community, and we were building tools to help you figure out how to afford family building, which for LGBT couples are very often surrogacy or maybe adoption, reciprocal IVF. But surrogacy is a really, really big part of the LGBT community's path to family. So, I spent a year deeply researching, this process, how complex it is, how expensive it is. And then, we ended up selling Daylight to a fintech, and I ended up having all of this time off where I sort of had to twiddle my thumbs and try and figure out what on earth to do next with my life.
For any kind of founder like that, that is the worst feeling.
Yeah, I was so bored. I started 20 different companies in my head. I almost became a therapist. I took one class, almost became a DJ. That was a very dark path. But at the same time, I was falling in love with my now partner, my now spouse, and we want to build our family with surrogacy. Those were the conversations that we were having as we were, first getting to know each other. Pretty much from the very beginning, I was like, children are important to me, and I want to have a family. And if you don't, then we're not a match. I was very, very intense. And so, also in my personal life, I was researching agencies, trying to figure out how on earth we would afford this personally. And then I met one of the original founders of Symbi, Laura, who, was working on a tool for the surrogacy world, trying to help with case management. And I was so inspired by her level of grit and passion to taking this really, really complex process and simplifying it as much as is possible with technology. And we spent nearly 9 months sort of going in circle, trying to figure out how we could actually deliver meaningful value to agencies. And then I had a number of conversations actually, and all of them are recorded and are on our LinkedIn and Instagram accounts because I did all of these interviews with agencies at the Men Having Babies conference. And everyone was saying the biggest problem that they have is screening, is onboarding surrogates, finding surrogates, screening surrogates. And, I'd been playing around with LLMs. I've been playing around with,
For people that don't know, what's an LLM?
Oh, sorry. An LLM is a large language model. It's AI as you think about it. It's what powers things like ChatGPT and Claude. But yeah, I just, it occurred to me that, agencies are spending so much time having these same conversations over and over again. but they can't really be a form because there's often so many different answers and there's so many different things that people could say. And it just occurred to me that LLMs would be such a great way to solve this specific pain point. And then I built it, built a very quick version of it and showed it to a couple of agency friends, and it kind of just took off from there, really.
Yeah, that's great. But these journeys are so deeply human. And like you said, there's so many variables in them, and most of them could be years long. So these are hugely long, hugely human, hugely expensive. And so it makes the case that, like, okay, well, is there something that we can use technology for? But there's just kind of this natural conflict, I think, a lot of it in people's minds, like, are we supposed to use technology and machines in these deeply human journeys? And so one of the things that I know that we looked at was, is now the right time? Because it seemed like people's perceptions of AI, and even things like, Siri and Alexa, like there are versions of AI that people don't even think about as AI anymore. And so we're like, hey, is now the right time? And there was this really cool Stanford study that was done that it blew my mind. It was a US based survey, 13,000 people over 12 months. And this was actually done a year ago. So I'm guessing that the results would probably be even more so now. But oops. The basic gist was that they were tracking metaphors in people's language when they're talking about AI. And it went from a few years ago, people were talking about computers and machines. And now they're referring to AI as friend, teacher, assistant, and even some people are saying God, which is, that's a separate thing. But it was like a 41% increase. And so at Symbi, when we were like, all right, is now the right time to start talking to people? And I've actually been pretty impressed with agencies, at least curiosity about how to incorporate AI in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to say, and we make a real point of building this into everything that we do at Symbi, we're not trying to replace human beings. We're trying to free human beings from repetitive tasks so that they can focus on doing the human stuff that's really, really important in this process. In the same way that a spreadsheet saves you a ton of time adding up numbers, and no one's going to say, oh, you should be adding those numbers up by hand, like you're not doing the real work. I think we will get to a place where things like AI have the same kind of perspective on it, where it's doing the busy work for you. It's doing the repetitive stuff so that you can have the freedom to be spending time with these people who are going through these incredibly complex, emotionally difficult journeys. And that is something, well, I mean, we'll get into it, because actually I think AI is doing a much better job at some of that stuff and taking the burden off humans. But that's the stuff that, when I talk to agency owners, when I talk to intake coordinators, case managers, they get into this because they want to give back to people. They have often been surrogates or IPs themselves. They want to help people and to do that human part of it. They don't sign up to like chase clinics for hours over email and trying to get medical records through fax. That's not why anyone signs up to do this. So it's really about, how do we get people doing more of the stuff they love and less of the stuff they don't?
Yeah. Okay. So one of those repetitive tasks, and I know it feels weird to call it a task, but and we're, again, like, we're talking to so many agencies, we're hearing some of the numbers that it's, if an agency has 500 interested surrogate candidates a month, 2 to 3% of those are actually qualified. So that's a lot of conversations that people are having to have. And if they can even get a surrogate on a phone call. So it's a lot of chasing, just trying to get, or scheduling, and people ghosting. And one of the agencies we're talking to said like 90% of their recruiting time is spent on unqualified candidates, or trying to at least get unqualified candidates on the phone, which they don't know are unqualified until they actually get them on the phone. So from a repetitive task standpoint, that is something that is perfect for AI. However, I think one of the number one concerns we hear from agencies is, will surrogates or potential surrogate candidates think that, like, if their first interaction with us is some version of AI, does it to make us feel less human? Because then the very next thing they say is, the reason surrogates choose us is because of typically some, like, you never know what it's going to be, random connection that we have. Like, oh, my golden retriever's name is Rusty. Like, and they're like, oh, mine was named Rusty, like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. And so how does Riley work within those concerns?
I think that our understanding of how people react to and interact with AI is rapidly changing. And I think it's also partially a generational thing. I think, the younger that you get, or the younger that you are, the more likely you are to be comfortable with AI, the more likely you are to be comfortable with technology in general, actually. But I think that also something clicked into place with me recently when I was talking to another agency owner, and they were saying, oh well, a lot of the people that come through our lead gen are not actually sure that they want to be surrogates yet. And many times the way I build stuff is I, try and really put myself into the headspace of the person that's actually going to be using my product. But I did that again, and I imagined, okay, I'm a mom of two. I'm super, super busy. I have this kind of calling. I feel like I hear that a lot from surrogates. Like, I have this calling to become a surrogate to help people. Do I really want to schedule a consultation with a surrogacy agency while I'm kind of on the fence? To me, that feels incredibly high commitment. It's like I'm scheduling something like with a person. And I would be worried that what that means is I'm saying, yes, I will definitely do this, but I don't know if I want to do this yet. I want to know more information.
And the other thing is, I think as soon as I have to start, I don't know, and maybe this is like a female thing, or maybe it's just a me thing. I'll just say it's a me thing for now. But as soon as I have to meet with somebody, I start putting pressure on myself. It feels like I have to perform appropriately.
Yeah.
Like I have to be the best. And so that's why I also think like sometimes you get bad or dishonest information out of people when you have a human because of the judgment factor that I just put on myself, I guess.
Yeah. Or how many times have you done like a doctor's consult and forgotten to ask key questions?
Yes.
And then the second you walk out of the office, you're like, wait,
Dang it.
I meant to ask this thing. AI never gets tired of you being like, oh, and another question, and oh, another thing, and another thing. And so yeah, I really do actually think that what we're seeing in real time is surrogate candidates reacting incredibly positively to having this much lighter first touch, where they can get qualified, they can get their answers answered, get their questions answered, and it's converting really well for our agency partners who are live. And I understand why people think that, the human part of this is really important, because it is really important. I don't think we will ever have a world where humans are totally taken out of this process and it's just all done by bots.
No.
I don't think people want that, but I think agencies should give themselves more credit. And I think that actually probably the reasons that surrogates are going with them are not just down to like, oh, we had the same dog growing up.
Right.
I think that there are a lot of reasons that a surrogate candidate will go with an agency. And, I think that agencies should do themselves the favor of realizing that actually, you're still also going to have a conversation with this candidate. It's just, you're going to have 5 conversations with 5 suitable candidates rather than 50 conversations with 45 unsuitable candidates.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. And I think that's the 2 points I want to make on that one. Because I think, and I know this feels kind of promotional for Riley, but I think it's really, really what I'm hoping with this podcast is that agency owners who are wondering about it, whether or not they use Riley, at least start to think about the process differently. Because again, like you said, like generations, I'm a Xennial. I'm right in between Gen X and millennials. And I am very open, very receptive to AI. People that are older than me are less receptive, but people that are younger than me are even more receptive than I am. So it is like that does matter. But the other thing that I notice is so many agencies talk about how kind of surrogate friendly they are. Like, we're here for you, 24/7 support. And yet their very first interaction with most agencies is this digital form and then an email spit out that says, you seem like a great candidate. We'll call you soon, basically, or fill out another digital form. Like, they haven't even interacted with you. or you're putting them in this kind of high stakes, you must call me, but you're going to call me when you're ready, not when I'm ready. Like I'm ready. I'm interested. I just filled out your form, and it could be 8 hours later I'm getting a phone call from you that I don't have the time. So that there's a disconnect there in terms of just how friendly that is to surrogates when, a Riley is instantaneous, has no judgment, is always on nights, evenings, and weekends. But the other thing is, you alluded to this a little bit, but when you are talking about not being super high stakes, and also when you pair that with that information from that Stanford study in terms of people are actually seeing AI as friendly or friends, assistants, and teachers, I wanted to talk through one of the case studies, and we won't say which agency this was with, but one of the case studies that we saw recently with a surrogate candidate that had come through, had done the intake through Riley, then was sent the application and filled out the application. So she had gone all the way through the process of filling out an application and submitting it to the agency, but then she came back to Riley. So tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, so this candidate had gone all the way through this flow, had done a ton of work, filled out this very long application. We're building stuff for the application next, just a little plug. And then she had a freak out. She had a conversation with one of her friends who made her feel really bad for her reasoning for wanting to become a surrogate. And she turned to Riley at 1:30 in the morning, and Riley was there for her, and was able to talk her down and help her feel validated in her feelings and answer her questions, make her feel, secure in this process again. And I was really blown away by how, obviously I'm really, really proud of Riley, and she continues to impress me every day. But this was just one of those really special moments where I was like, oh my goodness, like I can see Riley actually, we've only so far conceived of her as, at this very beginning part of the process, like doing this repetitive conversation over and over. But actually, Riley can be having these like more emotional conversations because for this specific, again, very specific use case of I need reassurance and I need someone to listen to me and to hear me out and make me feel heard. Riley's not providing medical advice. Riley isn't, making decisions unilaterally for the agency, but to have someone there that is able to, honestly, Riley almost sometimes texts back too fast. The texts come back instantly from Riley, and it's, if anything, it's almost too fast, but she's always there. She's able to really listen to you and give you what you need in that moment. And it just felt, I felt pride, which again is like talking about the Stanford study of humanization of AI. It's like I sort of have this emotional connection with Riley. She's kind of like my first. This clip will come back to haunt me when I do have children, but she feels kind of like my first child in many ways. So, but yeah, it's really amazing to see just what she can do.
Just for people that are curious about that, because I think if I was an agency owner listening, I'd be like, well, where is Riley getting or pulling the information to even respond appropriately to that? And especially like, well, if I'm an agency, like I don't want like Riley saying the same generic thing. Like what if my agency believes different things? Can she respond with compassion aligned to our agency's values, beliefs, process, that kind of thing?
Yeah, 100%. You can build a personality for your implementation of Riley. Every agency's Riley is completely different. They're all called something different. They have different personalities, and you can attach a full knowledge base to her. So all of your internal documents, as much as you want to be made publicly available.
Not publicly available to like other agencies or anything, but made so that the information can be relayed to a potential surrogate candidate.
Yes. Sorry. The caveat being anything you put in that knowledge base can be accessed by Riley, and therefore anyone that's talking to Riley can get access to that information. But LLMs do an incredibly good job of having this specific kind of conversation and having these kind of more low stakes conversations, and then having the agency oversight, because of course, as an agency, you get to see all of the transcripts of every conversation that Riley has. So you're able to see these things. Those new conversations are flagged to you. So then, when you're talking one-on-one with this candidate, you can have that conversation again to make sure that, everything is truly sorted.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about what we're seeing so far and just some of the kind of the trends, because I know one of them was surprising to us. We spent a ton of time picking the voice and the
Yeah.
tone of Riley. And what are we seeing there?
Most candidates prefer to communicate by text. And like when I say most, I mean an overwhelming amount of candidates prefer text. Like almost no one wants to talk on the phone, which does make me very sad because uh, it's one of those humbling moments as a founder where you think the thing that makes your product magic is this, and then your users go and use this thing and love this thing. So I was wrong, but the voice is still a really great way to demonstrate her capabilities, I think. But by
And
and
just to have,
large,
like, to have the potential to talk on the phone too is
yes,
great. Or to switch, like, start on phone, move to text,
yeah,
start on text, move to phone. Like, the options are there.
absolutely. And I think as we start to get, with the application, a lot of agencies ask for more long form content. I'm a talker, if you couldn't tell. Like I would much rather call up Riley and say, here's my answer to question 38 about my ideal day or something, and just ramble that off. So I think there are moments where a phone call is much better.
Yeah, and or to have Riley use phone and voicemail to be following up with people.
Yeah.
Potentially like, hey, you're only 20% through the application, just checking in on you. Looks like you dropped off at the lifestyle question. Is there anything I can help you with or any questions I can answer? That's a great use case for the voice of Riley. But yeah, what we're seeing is 90% of candidates are choosing text.
Yeah. And SMS over web chat as well. We do offer, the ability to talk in browser. But I think people really what I'm inferring is that candidates really like the ability to have an asynchronous conversation. You get a text on your phone when you are ready, you can respond, you can pick up that conversation whenever she's ready, whenever you are. And, you can pause that conversation again and again and she won't get annoyed. So I think it's a very, easy way to have this kind of more complex conversation.
Yeah, one of the other things that I think is cool, and it's again, like, I wish we could say, like, oh, we knew this was going to happen, but I don't think we did, is that more candidates are getting further through the process. So they're not, the drop off that so many agencies were seeing has reduced so much so that it's been a 10x improvement in terms of getting people all the way through application for
Yeah.
agencies, which is pretty remarkable. And it's also equating to a big time savings.
Yeah, I mean, when we ran Daylight, and we're doing consumer bank accounts, so everyday spending accounts. The data we used was it takes 10 touch points to make a high stakes decision. That's just for opening a bank account. So you need to have like 10 interactions with a company before you want to open a bank account. This is agreeing to carry a child. This is about as high a stakes process as you can basically get. So the idea that you would click on a Facebook ad and want to immediately schedule time with someone, and start and like kick off the process, so to speak, I just don't think is, obviously sometimes people know what they want, they go straight through. But I think people are leaving a lot on the table by not catering to these people who are truly on the fence and just want to learn more about the process, but want to do it in an extremely low commitment, judgment-free way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that just in terms of the time savings that we are seeing, I think it's averaging out to be about 31 hours saved on just the intake part of the process, which
Yeah.
is almost a
Every
week of work for somebody.
every month.
Yes.
Like that's a lot of time back in your pocket.
And that is what we're talking about in terms of, instead of using almost a week out of every month to chase unqualified candidates. And because a lot of people are like, well, we're not trying to, like, also put anybody out of a job. But what that means is now that person has almost a week extra in every month to spend with the qualified candidates and or the people that are already on the journey. So when we say, like, using AI to create more humanness in surrogacy, that's what we mean. Like, you're actually freeing up time to spend with the people that are on these journeys, that are qualified to be on these journeys.
Yeah.
So,
And no one likes to work on the weekend.
no.
No one likes to answer calls at 1 a.m. But when these are also incredibly, it's always a bit uncomfortable to talk about these things in business terms, but there's also a lot of money on the line here for you as a business owner. So we also see a lot of that pressure from agencies, or pressure on agency owners and the people that work at the agencies to always be on, to always be answering, And that's not fun. I don't want anyone to have to do that. You know, if we can help reduce that pressure, I think we've done a good job.
We saw patterns like this in the world of adoption where it was holidays was where we got so many more people that were interested because they actually have time to think about it and time to like do something. We also got way more kind of fraud and scam stuff happening. Again, like a Riley tool is 24/7 can address both of those things. Okay, do you want to talk through kind of maybe what's next for Riley? So Riley right now is for what part of the process, and where do you see Riley extending?
So Riley right now is for the intake part of the process. So from meta ad click, website ad click, through that initial form, through that intake conversation, through to it's time to schedule a meeting with one of the team or fill out the application. So at the moment, she sort of focuses on that whole process. So the next thing that we've seen is, that you've got this big, long application to fill out next. This is, the process is actually pretty standard from a lot of, like across a lot of agencies. I'm quite sure filling out a 48-page application is an incredibly high churn process. And
I wouldn't even start it. No way.
No way. And so I think there are a lot of ways that we can really, really help people fill out that application. Things
people
like
that can't think about it, that don't, because they don't have kind of the AI sense or skills that you do. Like, what's an example of that?
An example of that is, say I'm a surrogate candidate and I filled out the first section of the application, and then I got to get the kids to school. I don't have time to be on a laptop telling you my entire medical history. A couple of days go by, it's getting pushed to the back of my to-do list. It's just not a priority right now. Riley can notice that, reach out proactively, pick up like a text or phone call conversation to get the answers for that application, to reignite that process and to sort of build up the momentum again. So
Is that
reminder,
you could almost like do like, hey, I'm going to reach out for the next, and we're just going to do 5 minutes at a time for the next 10 days until it's done.
Yeah,
I think because that's, again, like I know I've got 2 kids, like stuff gets pushed to my back burner so often, and then I just forget about it because I don't have the space in my brain.
Yeah, exactly. You could be like, hey, Riley, like I'm kind of busy today. Can you try me again tomorrow? Having like a buddy there that is there to help you fill out this long application, also help you with answering the questions as well. So if I don't understand a question, I can either text Riley, or I can, if I'm on my laptop, I can click a button that says, I don't understand this question, help me understand it.
What's an example of that?
Like an example of a question, you mean? Or
yeah, like where somebody would get like might drop off the process or something if a question is phrased in a black and white yes or no, but there's a gray area to it.
Yeah, maybe I don't understand medical terms and I don't know what preeclampsia is for whatever reason, or I had some kind of complication. I mean, often these kind of things get caught in the very, very first conversation with Riley, but maybe I don't quite know if something that I experienced counts as a disqualifying condition. So I can chat to Riley and say like, hey, would this work? Explain this. Yeah. And then the other side, I kind of alluded to it earlier, but helping you actually flesh out those answers as well. I feel like I've had a couple of times now from agencies that they use that application to build the profile that is then used for matching.
Yeah.
And, often the longer form text boxes are not super well written, not super lengthy, not super filled out in imagination.
Uppercase, lowercase, misspellings.
Yeah.
I don't like, by the time I've answered 13 questions, I am giving the shortest possible answers now.
Yes. So, that's, again, a great use case for AI, where they can take that outline and flesh it out into a much longer form text that can then be used for the profile.
The profiles could also be like formatted way prettier. That's the graphic designer in me.
Yeah, same. And then I think also Riley, I mean, she does this with the intake calls. She flags the issues that might appear, things that have been said to her. And I think same's true with the application, right? Like, oh, this answer is probably a yellow flag, so I'm bringing this to the top. So you don't have to read through all of those question answers. You can just see what actually needs your attention. So that's also going to save you as an agency, someone that works in an agency, a lot more time.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, before we get to the magic wand, I just want to ask you one more question that wasn't on the schedule, but I'm going to put you on the spot.
Sure.
Okay, so you are a small agency and you are competing against some of these big agencies that have more money. So how does something like Riley, and maybe small isn't, maybe you're medium sized, but you're not a giant. And so how does something like Riley help you, again, I hate the business term, but for lack of a better word, compete?
I think actually the way I can answer the question probably most authentically is we are a small company. Like Symbi is a small company, and we use AI to compete as well. And so when you are a small company, when you're a medium-sized company, you are resource limited, whether that is cash, whether that is people, whether that is
Right.
time. And so you want to be making the most out of every minute of your day. And one of the very first lessons I learned at Daylight was I should be spending as much time as possible on, high value tasks, and as little time as possible on stuff that just doesn't actually help the business, but maybe needs to get done still. And figuring out a way to delegate that stuff or automate that stuff is business owners 101. I'm quite sure I'm not saying anything groundbreaking to anyone that's listening. We ran a webinar on it like 2 months ago. Like, this isn't just a Symbi sales pitch. Like, AI is everywhere. It is integrated in a ton of tools. I've already seen agencies using AI in really interesting and smart ways. And so we are just one of these amazing tools that can help save you time in your workflow so that you can be focused on higher value tasks.
Well, the other thing I'm hearing out of your words is just that it could add scale to a smaller team. Like, you don't have to you don't have to hire more people. Like with AI, it can, what we're seeing at least is it could be the equivalent of another intake coordinator for
Yeah,
you.
if you've cracked the code on like surrogate top of funnel acquisition, which I've actually seen a lot of agencies they have, and they have more people coming in than they even can match, let alone people that they can actually have one-on-one conversations with.
Or they're
And
doing I reached out 6 times and then they naturally just have to move on. And you're like, oh, but remember, this is a high stakes decision. You're going to have to reach out 25 times before it could potentially be a yes. So, like, literally leaving potential candidates, like, leaving them.
yeah, yeah. And another agency is going to be there to swoop them up, and probably a larger agency that has the resources to be reaching out to them many, many times, to be running a really sophisticated campaign.
Yes, and who is
Yeah,
now taking advantage of those first 6 touches that you did. Now they
priming
only
them.
have to do 18. So it's like that, like, oh my gosh. But with AI, with automation, you can really change that. Okay, I know this is getting way too promotional, so let's move on. But I hope what comes across is this isn't meant to be promotional as much as this is supposed to be passionate. Like, we are so intensely passionate about how AI can help agencies not only just, like, yes, your business will improve, but to create better journeys for IPs and for surrogates. Okay, so magic wand question. If you had a magic wand and you could change anything, but it's only one thing, what would you change in surrogacy?
I think this might be a controversial answer.
Ooh, I like those.
So we'll see. I would regulate the surrogacy industry. I come from the banking world where you cannot do business with anyone, including like customers, that you do not have a full like KYC, as we call it, know your customer, which means I've seen their photo ID. I've probably done a soft credit check. I've done a fraud flag. I've done a government watch list flag. Like, I know who this person is. And it is quite wild to me that we are doing these incredibly high cost, high risk journeys without often knowing who we're working with at a deep level. And so my brain just works in kind of equivalence in this way, where I'm like, banking is kind of a gold standard of like, you have to, like, there's so much possibility for bad actors in the space. So you have to make sure that everything is really, really buttoned up. And I think that in surrogacy, I don't think this is an intentional thing that any agency is doing. I don't think they're dropping the ball on purpose, but I do think that everyone is so overworked, everyone is spread so incredibly thinly that it is easy to say, okay, well, these guys seem like good people. So on vibes alone, we're going to move forward with them. Obviously, there's some background checking happening with surrogate candidates, like you're pulling their medical records. I'm not sure it is enough to know that a surrogate is not under financial duress by just seeing if she's on government assistance or not. To me, with my finance brain on, you need to pull a soft credit check to see if there's been any bankruptcies, if there's any debt. And so I think having more stringent like background checks of IPs and surrogates, and maybe of agencies, because I think we've seen in the press recently proof that there are bad actors on every single side of it. And I think the more that we can do to prevent that from happening, the better, ultimately.
Okay, this happened in the adoption world, and it would blow my mind too, because in order to become an adoptive parent, you have to go through what's called a home study. And it's regulated at the state level. But in the home study process, the most important information, like, where have you lived in the last 10 years so that we can run state background checks in each of those states, is self-reported. No one is doing an address verification to say, because if I have something on my record in Nevada, guess what state I'm leaving off my address history?
That's such a poor way to build that system. Like it's, obviously the majority of people going through the surrogacy journey are wonderful, incredible people, but you have to think like a fraudster to build systems that catch fraud.
Yeah, and just to give you an example of that, I will never forget this family because they were incredible on paper. They were both doctors, and I hate to say this out loud, but they were both incredibly attractive, and they already had a kiddo, and they had pictures of their home and their friends and the extended networks. Like everything was like, wow, it's like a power couple in Florida. And thank goodness we had this incredibly diligent home study provider doing their home study. And she just had this spidey sense about the woman. And she's like, I'm going to run her maiden name too. And when she did, she was like, oh my gosh, this family had previous and open cases with CPS.
Systems shouldn't be designed for people to be diligent. They should be designed to catch as much as humanly possible with the least amount of human effort.
Well, yeah, and what's really interesting to me, and for anybody that's interested, you can listen to the podcast we did with Kim Surratt, who is she's an art attorney in Nevada, and she was talking about regulation too, because this was something that I didn't know, was escrow companies in surrogacy. People hear escrow and they're like, oh, escrow, like when you're buying a house, and that is a highly regulated industry. Escrow and surrogacy, that's a complete misnomer. Like there's nothing that says it's quote unquote escrow. It's basically like a savings account that somebody else is managing for you. It is not regulated. FDIC, like you need to, families and agencies that are partnering with quote unquote escrow companies need to be very aware of what's going on at those companies, because I wouldn't know that if I was an IP.
Yeah, and my banking brain just like implodes when I hear that there's like deposits that are not, backed by the FDIC. Yeah.
Okay, that's coming. Build that next.
Okay, I'll add it to my list.
Yeah, add that to our roadmap.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Billie, I know we have kept you way longer than we wanted to, but thank you for being here. And hopefully agency owners, if you are interested in hearing more, reach out to one of us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for having all of these wonderful conversations with everyone in the industry.
Thanks so much for listening to The Future of Surrogacy. If you liked today's episode, send it to a friend or a colleague that should hear it. And be sure to follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to keep up with new episodes and behind-the-scenes updates. And if there's a topic you want us to cover or someone you think we should talk to, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time.